Hi guys, welcome to another episode of GameHammer Extras. Today what I want to talk about is collecting, the good points, the bad points, what to do and how to do it. So I thought I'd bring along my good wife here. You know, the good one.
Yeah, how many others are there?
Just you, as far as you know.
Really? Okay. Well, I'm Jennifer Kirk, by the way.
Yes.
I have to put up with this one, so send your sympathy to me.
She doesn't have to, she gets to. But Jen's a collector as well, not of games. I'm a computer game collector, and I love it. And Jen, what do you collect?
I collect all sorts. I collect books, I collect records, I collect model trains. So
Jen's actually highlighted the first issue I want to raise when collecting, which is, do you focus or do you diversify?
No, I mean, one of the big areas that I collect in model trains, there's so many different facets that you have to kind of narrow your interests, otherwise you're on hiding to nothing. You'll run out of space, you'll run out of money, and it becomes a never-ending bottomless pit. And games can be like that as well. I've seen with you, and you specialise in game collecting by generally picking a system that you want to either go for a complete collection for, or you narrow it down into subsets where you're interested in, say, like all JRPGs, that kind of way of making it manageable as much as anything.
Absolutely.
And setting yourself what you consider to be an achievable goal, both in terms of being able to find these things within a reasonable time frame, but also an affordability thing. Because if your goals are too broad, then this hobby can soak up a lot of money.
It could also demoralise. It's interesting that you said about a reasonable time frame, because that is key in my view. I'm in this for a long haul. I wanted to, ever since I was a kid, I wanted a complete set of games. I wanted to be able to look at a complete library of computer games. And for me, it was I would love to get the full Amstrad set. That was my childhood dream, but there are thousands upon them. The PS2 set that I'm going for now is about 2,200 and odd games.
It's still a biggie.
It's a big one. It's half the size of a Spectrum library. And the Amstrad wasn't far behind the Spectrum. Yeah, Spectrum has about 5,000 titles for it.
I suppose it was a lot easier to code for, and they could churn these things out in a lot more companies.
A lot easier to code for, a lot of bedroom coders. It's still getting games written for it now. There were specialist pieces of hardware and software and all kinds of things. So the Spectrum got a massive library. Plus, it came from 1982 until about 1994.
Yeah. Well, the PS2, it's a large collection.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is down to the fact that games were released for it from sort of like 2000 right through to 2013.
Yeah. So, which comes to the first thing that I want to say as a rule for collecting, and I think you'll agree with this. Set yourself a target that is actually going to be achievable. Like, for example, if you were to collect every game in the world, like The Last Gamer down in Australia, he has such a massive library that it's a possibility that people might think, well, he's got every game in the world. He won't have. He will have targets as well as we do. Set yourself goals and targets that you think you can achieve, because if you never get anywhere close to your targets that you've set yourself, it will demoralise you, and then you'll end up thinking, is this worth doing? Is this the hobby that's right for me? It's not as fun as it used to be. You've got to keep it fun for yourself. So, what would you say was a pitfall in collecting?
One is definitely, and this goes across all forms of collecting, not just games, and it's having too broad a goal, in that you find yourself desperately collecting for too many systems in terms of games, and you end up spreading your resources too thin, and that will then impact on other things. It's always very important not to spend more money than you can afford. At the end of the day, hobbies such as these are a luxury thing, and you must never find yourself struggling with necessities of life because you're finding yourself feeling obliged to put too much resource into your collecting habit, for want of a better word.
And haven't we all met someone who's done that? It is it is a pitfall that a lot of collectors fall into.
Yeah.
I see it a lot where people think, oh, I've got to have that. I've got to have that. I've got to have that. Oh, I can't pay my rent.
And if your goals are too broad, there becomes far more opportunities to overspend.
Absolutely.
You know, if you were going for a complete Saturn collection, complete PS2 collection, complete Mega Drive collection, in each collection there's the game that everybody knows about that'd be like £200 plus. And if you're on the lookout for those for multiple systems, it can get very expensive very quickly.
I mean, I ummed and ahed when we got Rule of Rose. The big one for the PlayStation 2 is Rule of Rose. It's currently about £210. In terms of scarce must-have titles, that's cheap. Because the scarce must-have title for the ultimate holy grail of Nintendo, for example, the NES, the stadium events in America, thousands of pounds. Yeah. So Rule of Rose becomes a relatively easy to get game, but it is the one for the PS2 at the moment.
Yeah.
And prices will keep going up. So it's one of those situations, if you are going for multiple sets and you must have that and you must have that and you must have... Soon after a while, you can't pay your rent, you can't buy food, you won't be able to pay your electricity bills.
Yeah, and I mean, PS2 is bad enough. You think you still got things like Kuon. You've got...
King of Fighters Orochi Saga.
Yeah, Wild Arms 5, Raiden 3. There's a
Gradius 3. No, was it Gradius 3? No, it was Raiden 3, wasn't it?
Gradius 4 it might be. But certainly Raiden 3 is the one that we saw for £95 in Birmingham.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And we had to turn that down. Sometimes you've got to know your priorities.
Yes, that is a key thing. Always keep your budget in mind and don't go over it. Doesn't matter how good it is an opportunity or a good bargain. These things might be scarce, but it's not Gaza 2 on the GX4000 scarce, where there are 2 copies known to have ever actually existed, and they were review copies that never went out to the public.
I think it's also important to say as well that for a lot of people, the thrill in collecting, the interest in collecting is the chase. If you complete your collection, you grow bored with it, and this happens across all manner of hobbies.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, what you have to tell yourself is that, you know, not everybody, but most people, the thrill is in the chase, the hunt for those elusive games. And as long as you've got games that you're still looking for, you've still got that interest and the thrill of the chase and the finding. And, you know, nothing can beat that high of finding a game that you've been hunting for, in some cases, years. But as soon as you run out of games to find, you may well find that you lose interest in that collection, and your interest then transfers to something else. And I can remember speaking to a guy who collected a certain type of toy cars, and he said he completed his set after about 12, 15 years. And he said it was only about 6 months before he realised that he'd completely lost interest because there was nothing else left to do.
There are no more worlds to conquer.
Exactly. And he said he actually found himself, he sold the entire collection because for him, completing it was the kiss of death for that hobby. And he moved on to collecting something completely different. And it's something to bear in mind that if you know, every game is out there for the right price. And if you just throw money at your hobby, you can complete these sets very, very quickly. And what you have to ask yourself is, what is the reason that you're collecting? Is it the thrill of the chase, or are you a completionist? And actually, most people, it's the thrill of the chase. There are very few people who will hoard a complete collection forever and a day and be happy in the fact that they've got...
It's mine, and they're not going anywhere. Yeah. It's mine.
The human psyche is about acquisition, not possession.
It is. We're a hunter-gatherer species originally. That's how we developed. But how many times in collector circles have we seen someone saying, "Oh, I'm getting out of it. I'm done. I've finished. So it's got nothing left for me. I'm selling my set. I'm going to go for this other set instead." Yeah. I've seen it 10, 20 times in the last couple of years. I've been a collector since childhood, getting what I could, but I've been it's been my main hobby for the last 3 years, and I've already seen 10, 20 people trade in their entire collections because they're going for something else instead now.
I mean, I must admit, my father and I, when I was a lot younger, it was more of my father's dream to, I suppose, fulfill a childhood fantasy of having every single model that Hornby 00 ever made in terms of model railways. And we reached a point in collecting where we didn't have a complete collection, but we had a mostly complete collection. And the ones that were left were the ones that had become so hideously expensive. You're talking like £400, £500, £600 just for one item, and were actually difficult to get. Even if you had the money, it was tricky to find these
actual
things.
Proper rarity.
Yes, and we reached a point where we moved on. And I remember the day when my father and I realised, actually, we sold up most of the collection. What we actually did was, because the nature of that collection, you got an awful lot of duplicates. I mean, a huge number of duplicates. And we reached a point where our decision was to keep one of everything and sell the rest. And, you know, to give you an idea of how much stuff there was, some of the duplicate stuff wasn't worth an awful lot. So you're talking about £2-3 per item. But we still liquidated around £6,000 worth of stuff. And, you know, that was the way that we dealt with it. I think because it had been such a fundamental part of bonding between myself and my father through childhood, because this went back to when I was quite young, through to into my teens, I think that we would have regretted if we'd have sold everything. So we kept one of everything. And that was the way we dealt with that. But we still liquidated an awful lot of the collection. And even now, it doesn't get used, or a lot of the stuff just doesn't see the light of day, which seems to me quite a waste. And in my collecting for model trains, I've particularly been of the opinion that I don't like the idea of hoarding stuff that is never seen. I'm a great advocate that if you have a collection of something, the only point in having that collection is to see it.
Or to be able to walk up, pick it up and use it.
Yeah, so for example in this room, it doesn't show up on the screen, but there are literally over 1,000 PS2 games in custom-made shelving.
1,605, I think it is.
Yeah.
And I just pick one off a shelf and I can play it. I think they're out, ready to use. The same about the Mega Drive, the Nintendo 64.
The important thing is you can see the spines, you can read what game it is.
Yeah, you can see a few of them now.
I always feel that that's important. For me, I mean, I know some people, their mum doesn't let them have their games on display, so they keep them in a shoebox under the stairs.
Well,
but
as long as they're accessible.
Yeah, we're taking the rip out of somebody who thought they were a key collector there. But essentially, for me, I think the red line for me in collecting anything is accessibility and visibility. If I collect something, I want to be able to see it. And I must admit, you know, my vinyl records, they're down in the lounge. You can see the spines, and you can find any record you want. They're there. They're not boxed up. They're not in the loft. They're not inaccessible. And I think if you're going to go to the trouble of, you know, what actually differentiates a collector from a hoarder is being able to access and to visualize their collection. And for me, that's very important. If you get bored with collecting something for, you know, either you've completed the set, is it only worth selling it all and moving on if it actually has an intrinsic value? Or, you know, if something is, you know, if you collect something that's so off the wall, you know, things like you could collect.
Well, you can collect anything. That's the problem,
I mean, that's the thing. You could collect something which is totally worthless.
Like, I've seen several collections of old style crisp packets and Coke cans and tins and cereal boxes, stuff that for the average person say, oh, I remember that style, and that's all that the interest is to them.
Yeah, I've seen people who collect things like pencils, or my older sister, certainly when she was younger, she used to collect novelty erasers for, you know, rubbing out pencils.
I used to love those at Sky. I had 4 or 5, and I had to arrange them on my desk So that was my area.
Yeah, and before it was banned in law for some of these things to resemble foodstuffs and to smell like foodstuffs. So I remember her collection. She had things that looked like chocolate bars and actually smelt like chocolate bars, but then they were banned because apparently stupid people were trying to eat them. And it's not a good idea to eat an eraser.
No, that might get into it. But we've gone on for quite a while with some of the ways of collecting and some of the pitfalls. I want to end on one thing, and that's about rarity. Now, I'm coming back to games. I want to show you the one I've got here.
She likes to brag about this one.
I want to talk about rarity. This is Rule of Rose. It was never actually released in the UK because of fake controversy, moral outrage and things like that. It was never actually released in the UK, but a few released copies did get into shops because it was going to be released and then it was pulled. Review copies are out there, things like that. So a UK copy is actually rare because most of them were recalled. But Rule of Rose as a whole, as just a PAL title, is not rare. Because I went on eBay earlier on, and there are 10 copies on eBay right now. I bought this from CEX because one copy turned up. It's not the UK version, it's in Italian. And that's the thing I want to talk about. Rarity isn't necessarily rarity. When people say things are rare, doesn't mean they actually are. In collecting terms, it seems that scarcity and rarity and uncommon to find have all become one term. So you've got to be very, very careful. If someone's trying to sell you something saying it's rare, do your homework first because it may actually not be rare.
Yeah, so for example, I mean, I've just pulled this off the shelf. This is SingStar Pop Hits 3. Now, Pop Hits 1, 2 a penny, they're like 50p in CEX. You'll find loads of copies. But not many people realise there's actually a Pop Hits 2 and a Pop Hits 3.
They're in French, aren't they?
Yeah. Certain markets, certain countries got different SingStar games. SingStar was the biggie for doing this. And in France, they had Pop Hits 2 and Pop Hits 3. They're almost impossible to find in the UK, which makes them rare in the UK, but in France, they're 2 a penny.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you found this for sale in the UK, people might try and charge a premium for the rarity. But actually, it's not rare. You can get it from France quite readily. If you want a game that's genuinely rare in the UK, you could do no worse than Pro Evolution Soccer 2014. Now, this is a game which probably isn't even on the radar of most collectors, but it's actually the last game ever released for the PS2, and because of that, not many people bought it. So it is genuinely rare. I've never seen a copy turn up at CEX. It's actually that scarce. But in terms of value, it's a heck of a lot less than Rule of Rose, even though there's a lot less copies of this about.
And that's the thing. Rarity isn't rarity in gaming. Even the most hard-to-get titles for the majority of systems had a few thousand copies made, at least. So, when people say rare, most of the time what they actually mean is wanted by a lot of people, hard to come by, or a bit scarce, but it's not actually rare. I'll give you the name of 2 actually rare games. Chase HQ 2 on the GX4000, of which there are 2 copies known to exist, both of them review copies because the game never came out. And Gaza 2, also on the GX4000, of which 2 copies are known. The same type of situation, both review copies, because the game never came out. Came out right at the end of the GX4000's life. The only systems that could run it were the GX4000 and the Amstrad Plus, both of which had been discontinued. Neither game got good ratings in reviews, so the publishers pulled them. There are 2 copies of each known to exist. That's rare. Rule of Rose has thousands of copies all across Europe. Its PAL region, massive. Loads of copies, you can get it whenever you want. Same thing with Earthbound on the Super Nintendo. It was going for like 300 quid at one point, but if you ever went to a convention for gaming, you would find 20 copies for sale at that convention. If you went down the road to another convention, you'd find more copies because it's not rare. Scarcity and rarity have become intertwined. It's not a good thing. Rarity is something very hard to find.
Yeah, and in a way it's a toss-up between genuine scarcity and desirability.
Yeah,
and I think
desirability is a completely justified thing. Some games are great and people want it, so you have to pay more because of supply and demand.
It's a bit like GTA San Andreas on the PS2. It's the most numerous game. There are more copies of that than any other game.
4 million copies.
Yeah, so pretty much there's probably a copy of that out there for every surviving PS2 console.
There is a copy for every collector who wants one.
Yeah, but it still commands a reasonable price in the second-hand terms. It's not a 50p game. It's about a £4 game, something like that.
I've seen it anything from 4 to 8, depending on the time of
and
month.
that's because of desirability.
Yeah.
It's the most common game, but because it's desired, that starts to push the price up.
And that's what happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's really all we wanted to talk about. It's the pitfalls of collecting as well as some of the various positives. I think, on the whole, positives, collecting is a great, fun hobby. I adore it. The chance to see some interesting new things that I've never seen before and play them and enjoy it. I like that. I think you're the same with your collecting, aren't you?
Yeah, I think collecting is in the human psyche, and it doesn't matter what you collect. It could be something as mundane as ring pulls off cans, as long as that gives you enjoyment, and that's really what it's all about. If you're not getting enjoyment from your collecting hobby, then you're collecting the wrong thing.
Absolutely. It's all about what brings you joy in the end of the day. So as long as you avoid the pitfalls, you're all well and good. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this, and if you have, remember to click that like button, share it with your friends, and they'll get some good tips too. But until next time, I've been Zoe Kirk-Robinson.
I've been Jennifer Kirk.
And you've been watching a GameHammer Extra on the Knobmouse channel. Also, remember to check out our Facebook page, and link is on the screen now and in the description, because we are now putting all of our own videos onto Facebook, so you can enjoy them there too. But until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.